this common thread of this ascension cycle is to really integrate our emotional body, our mental body, our physical body, and our spiritual bodies. Bring them, bringing it back to a greater sense of wholeness while releasing the densities. And as that's happening, just so happens that, we're able to embody more of our I am presence. It's the soul's desire to say, I'm big enough, I'm expansive enough, and I want to bring home all aspects of me. It's that understanding that in every single experience that we've chosen to participate in, whether it's something, of great significance in terms of a trauma or something seemingly less, the point of having experienced that is to feel that full range of polarity of that which we are at the truest essence of who we are, which is pure divine love and light.
Welcome to your awakening journey. Today's destinations include higher consciousness and actualized potential. If all ascenders could now please be seated in a comfortable meditative posture, we're about to ascend. You are now arriving at your host, Bryan Henry.
What is up, Ascenders? You're now listening to the Awaken podcast, a show in which we dive into expansion, invoking conversation to assist you in the Ascension Process, the process by which you are ascending into higher expressions of awareness, your divine purpose, and infinite potential. My name is Bryan Henry. I'm the founder of Together We Ascend and the Ascend Academy at togetherweascend.com, and your host of the show. The Ascension Process is one of integrating your soul in all of its bodies, physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual. As you undergo this process, as you bring home the soul fragments that you may have pushed away, and you go through this process of transmuting them, transmuting all the density, all of the emotion, and you open up as a clearer channel for your higher self and your I am presence, because that's what's taking place here. Clearer communication with your highest guidance and the integration of your highest self. This is what it means to integrate your soul. And as you undergo this process of soul integration, you will show up in greater ways for yourself and for all others. Brooklin Rayne is back for another episode of the Awaken podcast. She was on the show once before for episode 38. If you'd like to go check that one out, it could be found at togetherweascend.com/awaken38. I brought her back on because of the potency of the information she's able to channel for us about Ascension. I will say that the type of information that Brooklyn shares definitely caters to a level of awareness that is pretty up there. But I know those of you that are tuning in are ready for this. In this one, we get into this conversation of how we go about integrating our soul, showing up for ourselves, and in our greatest service to the all, which is what I know those of you in the Ascenders community is actively setting out to do. So, before we jump into this one here, gotta put out the invitation. The Ascend Academy is uniting and activating lightworkers. Some big things, some big changes are taking place in how we're going about doing this thing, family. The activation process that our members enroll into activates in a lightworker their higher purpose. And this definitely aligns with what this episode is all about, becoming a fuller expression of your highest self and your highest purpose through a process of integrating your soul, finding clarity around the gifts that you came here to give, to setting out and giving that gift, leading into the summit of this process by which you step into service and giving that gift. If you want to learn more about this process and all that we got going on in the Ascend Academy, I do invite you to head on over to academy.togetherweascend.com to learn more and perhaps apply to become our newest member. But what do you say we jump in to the conversation that I just had with the powerful Brooklin Rayne? I hope you enjoyed, Ascenders. So now with everything that could have been a distraction out of the way, everything's just like clear, pure. The space is no longer going to at all impede my total present focus on what's about to unfold here, which I'm really looking forward to experiencing with you.
Me too.
What's on your heart?
Oh my goodness. Well, I have to say, there's great parallel right now cosmically to the Grinch that stole Christmas, right? And not the overall storyline necessarily, but probably the most important aspect of it when talking about the heart, which is, and I feel with all that's taking place right now, with what took place with the full moon and the lunar eclipse, and then the new moon and solar eclipse and winter solstice, it's really this beautiful opportunity for our heart to, to grow 3 sizes, so to speak. So when you ask about the heart, I didn't even necessarily, I wasn't even thinking about that. But as soon as you asked it, this like massive amount of information just dropped in. And I love when the guides get playful, which I think is something that we all kind of need right now in this interesting time. And so, they brought in that analogy or that comparison of the movie, The Grinch That Stole Christmas, and how through the releasing of these patterns of density and emotional traumas from his childhood, right? And the letting go of these self-limiting beliefs, there was this huge expansion and ability for him to live in a greater sense from that heart space. And so what a beautiful way to express what's taking place and the opportunities that have opened up as a result of all of these amazing cosmic energies and gateways and planetary alignments that are taking place right now. So my heart is feeling big. My heart is feeling big. It's feeling like, it's in that period right now where sort of how we kind of completely disassemble into a state of almost felt sense of chaos so that we can then reassemble and land in this more profound sort of level of beingness. And that's what feels like is really underway right now.
And I feel my heart growing in just hearing you share that. So thank you for inviting me into that energy. I'm starting to see that that story of the Grinch in a totally different, let's not say totally different, let's say a higher perspective. I didn't realize how much potent wisdom and such a powerful message is in that story. And then it kind of occurred to me that the Grinch is green. The Grinch is green, and the heart chakra is green as well. I don't think that is by any means a coincidence.
Wow, nice uncovering there. Yeah, I just love when the universe drops in something like this that it's completely unexpected. But man, does it, it allows for us to really open this co-creation in a place of childlike joy and kind of a playful energy, which is so beautiful. Because to be, in complete transparency, I'd say that the last few weeks, although beautiful and so much humbling gratitude for them, have presented some big waves of growth. But also with growth, as we know, comes some different emotions, right? When we bring up these big patterns that are no longer, serving us, and they're kind of going deep, 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 deep into the cellular depths of our beingness through our Akashic histories, right? It's like, it's an eternal journey and process, as we well know. And when you get to that point where you've shown up in this way every day for, years and years and years, some people for decades, right? It's like now is like, going in there with like a flashlight and really getting to some of the stuff that's been the most ancient and the most sort of deeply imprinted under all the layers of this etherical and, fascia, if you will. And so I think that this particular month of December, it meets everybody where they are on their path. And for those of us who've been really doing this work for quite some time, it's like, okay, we're really going in, and we're really going to get deep. And so just big, for the micro and the macro always, because as we know, there's no separation, but big, deep, cellular, imprinted, collective, ancestral, personal wounds, like, Atlantis times, Lemurian Holocaust times, the Lyran-Syrian wars, like all these things are sort of coming up and really saying like, hey, are you ready? Are you ready to expand and, integrate the polarities and bring home the soul fragments? Or, no judgment, of course, right? Or are you not quite ready yet and you're going to contract and hold on to it for a little longer? Although I would say that what I've been experiencing both on my own personal journey as well as being the witness and of many others in private work, etc., is that there seems to be a lot more interplay and decision making coming from the higher self and oversoul that seems to be overriding some of what maybe the human self or the personal, self, the personality of Brooklyn, for instance. Not to say that it's not being weighed in, but in the desire to integrate more and more of heaven on earth, right? Integrating more and more of our oversoul technology and our higher self technology comes the switching over to that operating system, having a lot more, almost like your own council of light, right? You've got now, instead of just having the egoic self and the free will being operated primarily through the personal self, the personality of, now it's like your own personal council of your oversoul, higher self, and personality. And let's just say in this personal, or this my own soul's journey, I think the higher self and oversoul are winning.
So you say there's more decision-making power from the higher self. Now, isn't our experience always in complete alignment with what is desired by higher self? Because I can see the way of differentiating free will and the choice through this personal identity, how that can deviate from the higher guidance. But are we ever experiencing something that isn't in complete alignment with what is wanted from higher self perspective?
Okay, so it is, slightly more complicated than
Let's get complicated.
yeah, let's get complicated, right? So there's no separate experience necessarily. There are some, they're so funny. They're like showing like, there are always exceptions, right? There are certain people that have gotten or have agreed to, whether subconsciously or consciously, to allow for another sort of, to have their soul and their oversoul and their higher self be siphoned out, so to speak, or taken out. In which
What do you mean
case,
by that?
so there, thankfully, it doesn't seem to be something that is happening on a large scale. But there's, like there are takeovers, there are soul takeovers that take place. So they're bringing this up because, when you say let's get complicated, they're answering they're answering that for you. You specifically knowing that you really like to get into, into it all. So so they'll hold that as an exception, but without getting too much into all of that, to get back to, to the more of the basics of what was brought forth as the question. Yes, the more and more we're able to, so the higher self and the oversoul, with few exceptions, right, are always present in everything that we do and say, etc., as part of, our experience here. However, as we know, through the accumulation of different interplay and entanglement from the false matrix, from, all the different aspects of the false matrix, as we know, it's very multifaceted in nature, through our soul's journey, through our experience of acquiring emotional density, self-limiting beliefs, all these things, they all sort of act as barriers, in a sense, to clearly connecting with and bringing into this more cohesive communication, the interplay, if that's even the right word, of the higher self and the oversoul, and that wisdom and that clarity coming down through, and even being able to penetrate the barriers of this density, right? So there, it's always present. It's always, acting as the witnessing presence of every single moment of our soul's journey. But the more you show up and the more you're on, one chooses or not, but the more that one chooses to awaken and to participate in their journey. This is beautiful because this is leading into something that the guides were really chatty about right beforehand. So the more that one shows up in an attempt to really engage in the full transparency of their entirety, and the more that one stands, comes in and says, okay, this is the ascension cycle of full disclosure, and I'm going to participate in it, and do my part as a soul, knowing that, this will ripple out into all there is and be an invitation for the collective. The more that we inhabit more of our I am presence, the more that we clear our vessel, so to speak, and begin to integrate more and more of our crystalline nature, our divine blueprint, the more clear connection we have and clear communication we have to the higher self, consciousness or technology, and also the oversoul. And so my understanding of it is that now, with this beautiful alignment that's taking place here in December, it's like all these gateways and cosmic alignments and portals and pathways are really aligning in such a way that those of us who've been showing up and doing this work and are at a particular place on the journey have this greater ability to bring more of that in a pretty short order. bring more of that connection in. So when kind of backing up to what had come through, which was like, the higher self and the oversoul sort of winning the quote unquote, argument. It's that the expansiveness and the bandwidth of consciousness that is held within the higher self and the oversoul is far more expansive than our linear thinking mind and this sort of human construct by itself standing alone has access to, right? So the whole point of bringing heaven on earth is to bring that down so it can once again work together, right? Everything working together in harmony, right? So that we can be working from that place of grander expansion of consciousness and tapping in a larger and clearer and more sort of poignant way to pure source wisdom, this access. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so we ultimately are going to become fuller expressions of that expression of self, that more embodied, that more expansive expression of self, through integrating that guidance and clearing the channel. One thing that kind of came up that I'd love to just see how many different ways you kind of can conceptualize, because in what you're describing, you had said the more one chooses to awaken, and then you said the more that we clear our vessel out of these from these dense energies and these barriers, the more that we integrate this crystalline divine blueprint. I find that bringing all these different ways of conceptualizing it, and drawing the parallel between them really helps. Like, it's like looking at it from all these different perspectives that give you a broader and clearer view of what you're actually looking at. How else, like, would you describe the process that we are undergoing? What does it mean to awaken?
Sure. Well, I think there are infinite ways in which one does experience an awakening, right? And so many things go into that. Like, we're we're all so unique, right? We are, in fact, these unique individual expressions of source having a human experience. And some of us have had hundreds of thousands of lifetimes throughout all sorts of different universal systems and dimensional existences and realms, right? And others have just are sort of newer souls, if you will, right, with far less lifetimes having experienced. So just that in and of itself, right, presents so many different ways, because we, on this journey of eternal existence, we desire to constantly be experiencing ourselves and knowing ourselves as, in different flavors and colors and ways as this individual expression of source. It's not within our divine eternal existence or nature to want to continue repeating and experiencing the same thing over and over again. I mean, maybe for a period of time, that's an experience, right? That in and of itself is an experience to see, what would happen if, and honestly, it's funny, they're showing like we've really been given that opportunity with the manipulation that took place to keep us in the third dimensional reincarnation wheel.
The opportunity to repeat old cycles. Okay, so that's
Yeah.
something that has come up in the past. We'll maybe come back to it, but this idea that we have, in fact, played out the same thing again and remain stuck in old ways, in old patterns.
Yes. So, but for the most part, we continue to come in and experience different incarnations with different sort of blueprints of or maps of what soul lessons we want to experience, and what types of assistance do we want to offer in terms of transmuting ancestral patterns or collective patterns. And some come in to see how can we create more density so that we can create opportunity for others who come in next, or for us to come back in and then unwind that. So it goes on and on and on. And so I think that everybody's path to awakening is going to be a little bit different. There's so many different tools and methods and ways in which we can get to where we'd like to be in the ascension process, right? So everybody's path is going to be a little bit different. I think some of the basic foundational things that seem to be the common threads is that is in this ascension cycle in particular, is that because so often the guides, and this comes from the grandmother guardians of Gaia and all the inner earth, elemental collectives and different collectives that reside within the inner, realms of earth, as far out as, beyond dimensionalization, the Master Christos collective, all of them come in to show that, and to say in their own way and sort of flavor, if you will, that this is not only the golden age of ascension, but this is the golden age of full transparency and full disclosure. And I think that, that could be a common theme, if you will, in other ascension cycles that have taken place. But they tend to really hone in on the fact that in this particular earthly ascension cycle, that owning every single fragment of ourselves that comes into play, that is ready. And again, that's very specific to each person's soul journey, must be honored, must be integrated, right? Must be kind of brought back home. So in other words, spiritual bypassing is not something that is conducive to this ascension cycle. I'm not sure that it is for any of them, but they really hone in on that in this one. Meaning, we can't just decide we're going to integrate part of the emotional traumas and part of, and transmute parts of the self-limiting beliefs, but leave the ones that we really don't want to deal with because they're too painful, or we're embarrassed by it, or we don't want to own it. Leave those behind, and then still have the intention or the thought that we are actually going to be able to fully ascend, right? It's like, this is like time to get the flashlight out and really be okay going into every single little crack and crevice and shadow and honoring it, because that's a big part of the deception and the veils of illusion that have kind of blanketed us as the consciousness of humanity, is that there's something to be ashamed of, that we need to hide. And that's part of the grand illusion, because we were never meant to hide any of it. We were meant to come and experience all the polarities that are present in such a density of this third density, but in a way that we experience it, and then it had sort of an instantaneous transmutation of any of the density, and an instantaneous recalibration and bringing home, and sort of keeping ourselves in wholeness while experiencing the polarity. But through time and fragmentation and manipulation and skewing of that, and we've fractured off bits and pieces and so on. So this common thread of this ascension cycle is to really integrate our emotional body, our mental body, our physical body, and our spiritual bodies. Bring them, bringing it back to a greater sense of wholeness while releasing the densities. And as that's happening, just so happens that, we're able to embody more of our I am presence.
And experiencing those densities, allowing them to surface and be felt emotionally and experience. Is that a integral part to this integration process? Is that inevitable? Is that what must be done?
So, and that's again, it's like such a so, they're chatting even before you said
Sorry,
that.
one other thing I want to throw in there is your explanation or definition to what it means to integrate.
Okay, sure. So, okay, so I think what's being asked is, so not everybody's meant to come here and even awaken in this lifetime. Some people came to choose to experience the overall grand opportunity and alignment to awaken, and they chose to come in and be asleep to see what it would feel like to be in that massive polarity and shifting of dimensional existences, right? This whole shifting of realities from 3D to 5D and even higher. So, it's not to say that everybody came here to even experience participating in their own soul, ascension. But by being here in the human suit and incarnating in some way, shape, or form, you're having an experience of the ascension cycle, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whether you're fighting it, completely just asleep and like oblivious to it, and just sort of navigating through this collective,
whether you've heard the word ascension or not,
right? Okay, so
experience.
there's that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's that, and then those who've come in and are like, oh yeah, it's time, and have placed the divine alarm clock to go off, and as we know, some are like 5 years old that do that. Some of us, like myself, it's not until we're like 37 that we, the snooze button finally breaks. Some people are in their 60s. So we all timed it very, uniquely to our own experience. And then there are others that have timed it so they don't wake up at all, or they don't have any sort of desire or calling to be a part of this conscious participation in the ascension cycle. And so when they're bringing in the whole part about integrating or releasing, emotional densities and negative energy signatures and such, it's not to say that we have to relive the trauma necessarily, right? Or that we have to go through like, and reenactment, a full reenactment of something that was like devastatingly painful. It's the soul's desire to say, I'm big enough, I'm expansive enough, and I want to bring home all aspects of me. It's that understanding that in every single experience that we've chosen to participate in, whether it's something, of great significance in terms of a trauma or something seemingly less, the point of having experienced that is to feel that full range of polarity of that which we are at the truest essence of who we are, which is pure divine love and light. So, it would negate the purpose of having experienced it, to leave it out separate of ourselves, and to not reclaim sort of the whole purpose of having had the experience in the first place, if that makes sense. And so
reclaim, like those words, bringing it back, integrate, reclaim. I really want to dig into the essence of what that means. Is it loving it, accepting it, owning it. That's my that's how I would conceptualize it. That's my take on it. Is there more that you can say to what it means to bring home these parts of us?
Sure. Yeah, I think what it is that it's just accepting that it is all a part of self-love, because ultimately if you're, if we dial it out again into this, like the bigger sort of sphere of ascension, it's all about, the self-love. It's all about falling in love with yourself,
Mm.
and and yourself as God, right? As source. And so, part of that is like, okay, for us to do that, we really need to bring in every single aspect of ourselves, because it's all part of us, right? It's every single experience, every single, you know, particle of our beingness is us. And so it's like bringing in all of it and saying like, okay, it's time to come home.
This
And
is
there are
me.
those, right, because anything that we would not want to bring home would only be because we're running it through a lens of judgment, or that it's not good enough to I'm not, that part of me is not good enough to be considered, lovable or
Mm-hmm.
acceptable, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because we're still running it through to a certain degree until we're not, through this lens of judgment,
Mm-hmm.
good, bad, instead of just looking at it from sort of this higher, grander perspective of God consciousness, which is there is no good or bad. There
Mm-hmm.
just is. But by having come into this third density, everything gets run through this range of emotion, and this range of the mental body, right? And so it's, through these experiences, it gets sort of, doesn't move past, so to speak, that, because there's the judgment that gets put into it, and then it's like, okay, now this is not good, this is painful, this is not something I want to take ownership of. And so, we push it away. Okay, this doesn't feel good, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then, I mean, it's so there's so many aspects and frequencies and everything that go into it, right? Because again, we go back to the whole part where it's like, within the original divine human blueprint, we were meant to experience, quite a full range of different emotions here. But we were never meant to, our original blueprint was such that we always knew that we were not separate of God and not separate of one another. And we always had full range of our multi-dimensional levels of conscious awareness. So, it was only in the fracturing off of, and the sort of cutting off of humanity's consciousness from the universal time matrix and source grid, that we kind of got stuck in this third dimensional reincarnation wheel, and this whole sort of fractured separation matrix that led to sort of, ultimately a dysfunctional way of navigating through the human experience in this full range of emotions. And there's been so much manipulation to the mental complex through different programs and judgments, frequencies and such, that has created this very unique opportunity for us to come into this ascension cycle and be able to kind of put Humpty Dumpty back together again, so to speak, right? It's like come in and, okay, well, this is quite an interesting and challenging incarnation, but here we go. Let's do it. Now we have everything's kind of lining up planetarily, and otherwise we're reconnected to the source grid. It feels like every single linear month, more and more connection to the higher realms of, God realms and beyond continues to take place. There's more and more galactic assistance coming in. And so I don't know if I answered your question or created more complexity for us, but essentially, um, we're meant to honor each and every fragment of ourselves that we possibly can, right? That we have the desire and intention to do, and welcome them back in. So bringing back the ownership. I am not a victim of my circumstance. I am an individual expression of God, an infinite creator being. I realized I came in to experience all these things. I was asleep for, a fair amount of it. And so I really did a good job of accumulating all these layers of density. And now I'm awakening. And I know that it's time to take ownership of each of the roles I played in every experience, and bring back those fragments of myself, bring back the wisdom, bring back the gifts, bring back the fragments, while simultaneously transmuting any of the emotional densities and traumas and self-limiting beliefs. Is that helpful or more confusing?
Yes, everything. Here, let me answer that question for you once and for all. Everything that you're sharing is helpful. If it's not clear, I'll definitely be there to dissect it even further, which
Okay.
lets us get into it even further, which is great. But yeah, don't ever feel like anything that you are sharing is not valuable, because it is, and we'll find even more value in clarifying it further if need be.
Yay.
To recap, for our lovely listeners, and even just for myself and digesting the information, um, this fracturing off, I like that word, this fracturing off of self, to me what that is deeming aspects of ourself unlovable, aspects of our experience as unlovable, unwanted. I don't want to look at this doesn't feel good, judging it as bad.
Yes.
um, and what we're being called to do in our expansion, in our evolution, is look at all of that and say, or not even say, would it not be, look at all of that, look at all of that from a place of pure awareness, non-judgmental, loving awareness. I always love to say that. I always love to say love is acceptance. So in that, I think it's also important not to say, like, you're not lying to yourself and saying, oh yeah, I like this feeling. You don't need to try to convince yourself of that, but it's coming from that place of, it's me and I accept that it's me, and I can own that, and it's not, no part of me is worthy of anything less than love.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Like, to sum it all up, really get into the center point, land in that center point of our beingness, the upper heart chakra, the sort of the atom seed of our eternal existence, right? That, for me, it shows up as this beautiful diamond complex. And, get really attuned to that being sort of your eternal navigational center point, and get real neutral. And that's really where I think all of this is kind of coming. And I'm surprised that, that hasn't come in yet in this beautiful unfolding, is the neutral observer. When we get neutral, really that 0 point of neutrality that we can kind of bring our awareness into, which exists within that atom seed of our existence, right? That neutral observer, that 0 point, is really the only place where we have the true ability to integrate polarity, because which exists within the present moment, right? It is when we get real neutral with it, which to your point is the letting go of putting any judgment, any opinion, any good or bad, right? The weightedness of good or bad on it. And it just is. It just is. Yes, there's certain things that we know within this human realm that evoke, that are known most often to evoke certain types of emotion, right? And there's nothing bad about emotion. It's what we do with the emotion that creates disharmony, disease, or discordance, or expansion, right? And so to kind of play off of what was previously being explored, is that if we're in that neutral, if we're in this 0 point, in the present moment awareness, and we have an experience, and we're experiencing it from this place of neutrality, just by virtue of being a human being, we may feel within, our cellular makeup, this, a sadness, or at least the awareness of sadness, right? It's when we become the sadness, and we hold on to the sadness, and then, and we're not able to, express it in such a way. We're hiding it, or we're trying to do all different types of things to sort of push it away, and that then it becomes sort of this density that gets stuck in our field. But if we're in this place of even just opening, like, okay, I'm this infinite creator being, I have an infinitely large heart space and capacity to hold all that is, and I'm centered here in this place of neutrality, and I witness something that is very sad. I may have tears, I may have experienced for a moment, the essence of the sadness, but I'm honoring it, and I'm very present with it. I'm not diving into it and going into this whole sort of logbook of cellular imprint through my own soul's experience and my ancestral, the DNA that holds my ancestral imprint of all these massive, cataclysms and things that held this deep sadness that was never processed, right? I'm here in this present moment experiencing it, and allowing it to move through me and honoring it. Now, that said, the more clear we become, the more we have shown up in a way of releasing the density and integrating the fragments, the more clearly, when we're in that present moment, we can start to see or feel, everybody's different, what, we start to get really, really specific within our field of coordinates, right? And we can start to see, ooh, wow, way out here in my field, I can see that I still have some stuff from my Akashic history that's kind of being pinged on this sadness. Okay, let me bring that in right now to explore. What's that all about? And we can come from this place of greater sovereignty and less reactionary. The clearer our field gets of this, the more we've integrated our emotional bodies and our mental bodies, the less sort of interference patterns that there are, because we've already been showing up to release those. Is that? Yeah. I got myself.
I know. She's really good. Okay, so what kind of popped up here is this. The more clear and expansive we become, would it be there more that we are going to be able to see, to work on collectively, in terms of what we can work on for the collective?
Yes, I think that goes hand in hand. Now, again, some people have shown up to do greater collective work, right? Like, meaning a more significant amount of collective transmutation.
Yeah.
Whereas others, everybody comes in with their own set of things that they've, assignments, so to speak, that they've come up with. But certainly I can speak from let's say my own soul's journey of this lifetime, that yes, it seems to me, and again, it would be unfair of me to say that this is how it looks for everybody, but I think this is fairly common in the sort of the natural unfolding, or the most common unfolding of how this works is, we start off by realizing there is such a thing as awakening, right? We start off by realizing like, okay, something has to shift here. Most people hit like a breaking point, like a surrender point, which I can say definitely happened to me. And so then it's like, okay, now what do we do? And it seems like the most low hanging fruit is the density and such that has been accumulated from this incarnation, right? This particular lifetime. That seems like that's the first kind of layer of clothing. That's funny. It's like the jacket, right? Okay, let's take that off first. Yeah. So, and of course, as we know, that is intertwined and entangled and, so forth with ancestral, like a lot of ancestral stuff, because, we've come in to be in this biological lineage. And so,
we're
it's
working
our own
on
soul.
that even before we know that we are.
Oh, yes, exactly. And that's very, and none of it's separate, quite frankly, because even the stuff from this lifetime, and as our, as an individual soul, we're all connected through the law, through the law of one.
Yeah.
But it seems like there's more of a personal focus initially, right? It's like, for me anyways, there wasn't even the ability to have the awareness that I would be doing this for anybody but myself, because of the amount of density and emotional, kind of storm that had been brewing for so long. It's like, it's like, okay, let me just kind of get through some of this so I can even have the ability to see that there's so much more to this. I think if we were to go into that first moment of awakening and someone came in and said, okay, well, listen, get through this, and then you're going to have to get through this, and then this, and then I hate to tell you, but you're going to start going to hundreds and hundreds of lifetimes, and you're going to start clearing your own personal, because that's what they started showing as this, they're like, wait, now here's another thing, Brooklyn, when you go into this past lifetime, you're going to clear from that past lifetime, if it's a big pattern, and depending on what your assignments for in that, you're going to clear your own soul, bring back your own soul fragments from that lifetime, but you're going to bring back, the invitation for the collective in this lifetime as well. And then, you have your own you have stuff for the ancestral lineage of that life. And I'm like, whoa, it's like literally never, it's this whole process, right? It's just like an infinite journey. But in an effort not to overwhelm, it's like, and that's the beauty. That's the beauty of it. It's challenging, but once you start to really go from like an intellectual concept of the potency and relevancy of living in the present moment, when you get into the present moment, it brings it's the 0 point. So it's the all that is and the nothing, right? It's that place of like, it takes a lot of pressure off, because all you have to do is keep recalibrating back to that place. And that's where everything happens. And it doesn't have to be thousands of years to integrate that which has been fragmented. Lots and lots of things and patterns of big patterns can be integrated back in a very lightning speed, if you will.
I want to go a little bit deeper in into the rabbit hole of doing work on ancestral traumas and transmuting these these programs, and because I do feel like there's a level that many are stepping into, especially those that are tuning into this energy, where they are coming up to that point where just to kind of clarify things, just so that we're all grounded in the same place. A a more grounded explanation to what I'm hearing you describe is, um, the first step in the journey is, let's figure out me. Let me work on me. You get to a point where you realize, like, I can improve how I feel. I'm gonna make it more practical here.
Yes.
We hit that point where we wake up and say, I can improve how I can feel. Oh, and that becomes your focus, right?
Yes.
I'm going to create for myself the experience that I want to create. I want to improve how I feel. I'm going to work on that. Um, but then it kind of opens up to where you reach a point where you're thinking bigger. Like, now I'm starting to realize, well, it's always still entirely that, because the good feelings start to come from doing something that goes beyond just yourself. Then it becomes, I
Yes.
want to do something for the collective. I want to do something for others. I want to do that because it feels good to. Um, that I feel like is that next stepping stone. I feel like everyone has to first go through that first stage first, where it's working on me before they get to that point where they're thinking about a bigger purpose. And then we start to open up the oneness. Then we start to recognize that what we were thinking of as ourselves is a very limited, narrowed concept of self. Um, and then this is where I think a lot of our listeners and audience is at. Okay, I'm oneness. I want to serve. I want to do whatever I can towards supporting this grand awakening that's taking place. Um, to those that are in this stage of their journey, I think I fall into this camp. I want to support the transmutation of the collective traumas that are embedded in this collective consciousness. Um, how do what words do you have to someone that is consciously making the decision to approach that, who wants to do that, who wants to do this work?
Sure. It still all happens sort of through our own personal experience, right? So, getting to that point of like we are all one, right? So even when we start off in that place, that first day of beginning the journey, like because of where you are sort of in your level of conscious awareness for the, and I'm speaking in generality, it's like you have to just think of it as that, right? Like I've just got to make these, no one else is going to do this for me. I need to show up and I need to do these things. And right. But then, you're immediately start up leveling this grander scope of awareness and this greater ability cellular level to have go from like an intellectual understanding to an embodiment that, okay, we are all connected. And it keeps getting more and more and more and more and more and more tangible and like embodied as we continue along, right? So, intention plus breath, intention plus light, intention, plus pure presence in the neutral, present moment equals profound miracles and profound shifts and profound alchemy. So the more you show up with this desire to be in the greatest service to, humanity and beyond, or to the collective, or if there's a particular thing that you just have a cellular knowingness that you're here to be a part of the transmutation of, right, the alchemy of, the more and more you kind of, the more and more you integrate more clarity within your own personal vehicle, right? Your own human suit. And of course, within the human suit, we know, which is just this very small fragment of our existence, and here on this earth plane, the more we show up in all the ways that I just saw that too, of all the ways that, to embody more of our crystalline nature, more of our divine blueprint, which is something that naturally takes place along all of the process of doing what we've been talking about, the more clarity and the more bandwidth you can hold and transmute and bring through and for the collective, right? And so it's like you have to put your oxygen mask on first. And I know that we hear that so many times, but it's so perfect because it's like, continue no matter where you are on your journey. I think it's important to continue showing up every day saying, I release all that no longer serves me. I bring in more of my I am presence or more peace or more divine light or whatever, however, whatever most sings and lands for each individual. The more we do that, the more we become capable of becoming that invitation, running, and transmuting sort of instantaneously, but being in a space with a group of people, you become an invitation, you become sort of the facilitator of a grander scope of alchemy to take place. So it's, and then of course, depending on who you are and what gifts you bring in. I mean, some people are these massive transmutation stations. I have a fellow colleague who has this huge column of like golden light that streams from beyond the 18th dimension all the way down. I mean, as soon as I met her, I was like, whoa.
I have to ask, you see this visually?
Yes.
Wow.
I mean, I don't necessarily see it with my plain eyes, but I can see it in my mind's eye. Mm-hmm. And actually, to that point, I was just meeting with her the other day, and as we're engaging on Zoom, right, and just conscious conversation, I can see like all this light around her, and it's moving, and I can like see these different like highways and pathways of like with my visible eye actually. Mm-hmm. Moving. So sometimes it is with the naked eye that some of these things are brought in to be shown in that way. Yet most often it is shown through my third eye, or it comes in. So
there's still a difference in how you are perceiving physicality and what you're describing. Beyond
the veils, right
there you can still kind of this is physicality, this is energetic beyond the veil.
It's sort of being able to see the visual of what's actually taking place in real time, and but because everything is in such slower sort of vibrational frequency, but that's all changing as we know. Most of it is seen through the mind's eye, through, if that, And so some people come in here with these vehicles, right, that and these gifts to that's what they do. Like they don't even, it's not that they see a lot of things. It's not that they intuit or they hear a lot of things. It's like their beingness and just showing up is transmuting massive amounts of density on all levels. So I think that just people just aligning themselves with that pure desire to be in service. And then, one of the biggest ingredients, it's so, it's like one of those unwavering divine principles is faith, trust, and surrender. and to really continue as you're clearing your container, as you're integrating the polarities, as you're truly bringing more of your heaven on earth, right? The easier that becomes, the more and more that becomes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because the other thing that I want to say to that, and this is why I think you brought up the oxygen mask analogy, putting it on yourself before you put it on others. We can say, right, again, at this level, we can say aligning yourself with that desire to serve others is an intention to have. This is a great intention to have, that isn't just supportive of others, but is of our highest nature and our highest experience. But one may also be in an experience, and I speak from personal experience, where that's not right. Like, thinking about wanting to help others doesn't feel relevant at the time, because what might be needed in that moment is, you know, checking with oneself, self-care. And I know one thing that I can struggle with sometimes personally is when I'm not motivated to serve others. I don't feel a strong motivation to do something purposeful that is directly in service to other people. I could feel like something's wrong. Like that can worry me at times, like feeling that way and just like, what's wrong? Like, what's wrong with me? I'm not motivated to do. I'm not motivated to serve. What do you have to say with regards to perhaps being in such a place?
Yeah, I think it's beautiful. It's a beautiful segue into the subtleties. Okay, so again, it's like I feel like this whole codex is totally building here. And for some listening, it may feel like there's a sense of redundancy, but yet it's all very brilliant in how it's building, because it's penetrating different pathways and different, entry and exit points of consciousness as we're speaking about it. So it's beautiful you bring that up, because the greatest service any of us can ever be in is to show up for ourselves and ask, to do exactly what we've been talking about this whole time, which is release that which no longer serves us and integrate more of our I am presence, or that which does, right? And here's the thing, we're all interconnected. We're individual expressions of source, yet anytime you show up to do anything that is to enhance your conscious awareness and to release density, there's an invitation that's immediately sent out into the quantum field of existence that is now there and present for every single other being. And of course, and that's beyond the earth, and that's beyond our universe, and that's beyond the next universe and the next universe and the next universe. Now, the greatest wave of the ripple effect takes place within the macro of Gaia, because we're connected through this, the physical human suit. And of course, we're in closer proximity to one another here, right? We're all on this, for the most part, dimensional plane. Yet the ripple effects keeps on going infinitely out. So every single being, every thought you have, every word you speak, every action you take or we take, affects everything in existence. Truly, everything in existence. So being that we have the most sort of, control wouldn't be the right word, but we are the conductors of this human suit and our own soul's experience. That's where the greatest work for all can be done. The more you show up in the authenticity, the more you show up with that clear connection and clear intention to be in the greatest service to all others, seen and unseen, have the knowingness that it always is, begins with the thoughts that you're bringing in and choosing, the words that you're speaking, and the actions that you're taking. Because if every person were just to come back into that knowing, and that even that general level of conscious awareness, can you imagine what would take place if every single person was showing up and doing that, not projecting on others what they think needs to be done, not judging, but taking full responsibility and full transparency and full ownership of their authenticity, then voila, this our existence becomes completely different. So I think that there's nothing wrong ever. Of course, we know it's meant to be this walk that takes place together. Our service to ourself is always going to be the service to all other beings, seen and unseen. There are going to be times when we're going to be giving more outwardly in terms of that, whether it's sharing an experience or sharing, or assisting in some way. Yet we're always meant to kind of recalibrate and say, okay, am I showing up for myself in the highest vibrational frequency, that I'm capable of doing? Am I, as I share this wisdom, that's coming through me with another, what am I learning about this for myself? Because there's always both teacher, student, teacher, you, me, you, right? It's all the same. So we have to be really, what they brought in as you were asking that question is, now here comes where it gets really kind of grander opportunity for clarity. There's a lot of programming within the separation matrix, which is often referred to as the false matrix, or the 3D matrix, right? Of self-sacrifice, which has been so cleverly identified with as service to others. And so there's all these little frequencies and threads and webs that play off of guilt, shame, and all sorts of interesting frequency bandwidth that fall under this giant iCloud of the separation matrix. And so it's really messes with people on big, through societal beliefs, organized religions, all these things that have very much imprinted and brought through greater tethering of the separation matrix. People have come to really identifying self-sacrifice with service to others. And there's a big difference. It's been, we've been imprinted with this belief system that, self-care and showing up for ourselves and putting the focus on ourselves is selfish and somehow taking away from another. But that can never be true, because there's infinite love available and accessible. There's infinite abundance. There's infinite everything good. Yet that's all part of the separation matrix too, this false belief system that there's a finite amount of any of those things. So it all has so brilliantly been orchestrated, right, and imprinted into that cellular DNA through ancestral patterns, through collective patterns, through different cataclysmic, timelines that have taken place that are now coming back around for us to experience as humanity and to respond differently. So I think that's why the guides of all dimensional existences constantly say, look beyond this grand illusion. Every time you show up for yourself to release that which no longer serves you and bring more of your true source, essence in, you create that ripple effect for all. That is the greatest service. And then you have fun and you start to really embody that more, and then you can play with it and you can create platforms, but all along you're still showing up and doing it for yourself. That doesn't come a point in time that I'm aware of, or that I've been shown through any recalls of past lifetimes either, where we are like, oh, we've gotten to where we need to be. Now all we do is, teach others, right? It's like, no. There's never that moment, because we're always meant to be interchangeably the teacher and the student. And we're always meant to be learning more and expanding more and experiencing more along the journey. It's, when we start to become stagnant, or we start to feel like we've reached, the end point, is when we are creating stagnation and the eternal essence of who we are. When we start to accumulate, things that, begin to weigh us down. It's meant to be this constant expansion and this constant experiencing more and more.
For self.
Yeah.
I'm really glad that you brought up the this program that is embedded and running in the collective consciousness that you describe as self-sacrifice. And well, one of the reasons why I'm glad that you did is because it's certainly something that I've run into. The way that has manifested in my experience is this feeling of just this draining feeling, overextended, to the point where, it's serve, and then reaching a point where I feel drained, and I'm not enjoying what I'm doing anymore. And then that, hitting that wall is this experience of, why don't I feel motivated to do all the things that I once was so motivated to do? And I think the explanation for that is because there was some tie into it being this self-sacrifice that I was making. A quote that has resonated with me, but I'm seeing how in some regards hasn't served me, is lose yourself in the service of others. Lose yourself in the service of others. I will say why it resonates with me. When I hear that, lose yourself, I think about times in which I was so present with this mode of giving and serving another person that I wasn't thinking about myself. I wasn't thinking about anything. I was just in this, I was so deeply present with that moment that it was that, that presence, that life that we feel when we're here and now. And I've had this experience in serving another person, or giving something to someone, or doing something for someone. And so that's why I've kind of loved that idea of lose yourself in the service of others, because this experience of the ego and all the distractions just kind of dissolves, and I'm here giving, and I'm loving that, and that feels good. But I think the intention, or this notion of losing myself into the service of others and wanting to be in that space, has actually kind of railed me off track. In that, again, I feel like it's kind of caused for this self-sacrifice. And I guess what I'm feeling called to say right now is, I'm probably feeling called to say it because I'm not the only one who's done this, is the shunning of the self, trying to get away from the self and lose myself in the service of others. What's really setting in right now is the importance of, still showing up for you and honoring you and what feels good for you. Um, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think it's beautiful because, just in that, in that grouping of words, lose yourself in service to others. It can be interpreted, and it can be interpreted through our mind, and it can be interpreted through what we choose to do with that, or how we act upon that in so many different ways. And I think in and of itself, it is beautiful, right? Because if we can lose the egoic, to your point, the egoic self, when we're in service to others, when we can take away, and it's really, to me, it feels like in its truest essence, it's saying fully embrace unity consciousness, law of one. Fully embrace that, because when you fully embrace that and embody that, everything that you're doing is as a collective consciousness, is as like this giant sort of wave of source energy moving together, working together in unison, right? And that is service to others, and simultaneously it is service to self. Yet, where we are right now in this particular point in the human ascension cycle, it's you can apply that. You can apply that to different aspects of every day. And when, yet again, and I'm not, I love when they do this. It's like, but you must come back to be refreshed. You must come back to recharge. You must come back and say, okay, so every time I go out in a way of serving others, there's always a way in which, there's a giving and a taking that takes place, or, an exchange that takes place in the service that I'm present in right now, and you can combine the two. It doesn't have to be separate. What is my lesson in this? What is my opportunity in this? What parts of me are needing the same service right now, and are participating in this, right? And and getting real clear in any service, whether your self-care, or the more you're in that present moment, the more you're in the present moment neutrality and the witnessing observer of what's taking place, the less energetic currency that's being delved out, because you're holding it all here in the still point. Your consciousness is playing a role in it, right? Yet you're not siphoning out energy to past experiences, or to, you're here in the center point. And it's all about this, the whole exploration of all of it, but when you start to feel like, oh, something feels a little off balance here, then it's a great opportunity to say, I need to just take some time and reflect on this. What, were there intentions involved that, felt aligned, but really were more along self-sacrifice, spectrum? Or here's another thing too, when you're in these roles, different roles of service, are you dealing with the core essence of another being, their eternal self? Or are you dealing with some of these aspects of them that are sort of other entities working through them, or are aspects of them that are really just basically siphoning your energy? And by you even participating in it, even though your intention's really good, by you participating, you're enabling that. And and it's more of this sort of sympathetic energy versus holding a space of compassion, and that's a sure way to drain the battery. So I know we're throwing a lot of different things here, but for some reason, some people listening today are wanting to hear that. And there's just so many threads and different. That's such a big, energetic topic, so to speak. But it's just a really beautiful and important, and especially in this time of great energetic gateways and portals, and it's really important to check in many times throughout the day, each day, coming back into that center point, like, and where does this service to all need to take place right now? In meditation, in silence, just with myself and the all that is, or in interaction and participation with others. They're both service to others. You know what I mean? But what does my physical body need right now? What does my mental body need? What does my emotional body need? What does my spiritual body need? Check in. Make sure that you're checking in with that eternal seed of your existence, that center point of your beingness, the ultimate source wisdom and navigational tool, and not checking in, versus checking in with, the separation matrix, societal belief systems, and sort of that self-sacrificing energetic field that pretty much is everywhere currently.
So, I think very important thing we're going to be segueing into now. So I'm glad you brought it up. Checking in with the center seed of your existence. I want you to. Well, we're gonna unfold that, but I also want you to share more around what that is to you. What that you described it as the atom seed of your existence. I believe there's another way that you described it. With the word crystal involved.
Your diamond crystal center, like this,
Your
I see it
diamond
as this
crystal center.
diamond heart complex. It's this like beautiful, multifaceted, technology that exists within the center point of and it looks different for everybody, and but yet it exists for every, human that possesses an organic soul.
Okay, so what was it again? The diamond crystal.
Your diamond crystal heart complex.
I love that. What is that? And well, I'll let you take it away in terms of how deep and metaphysical you want to go with it. But what is that?
Ultimately, there's so many layers to our own personal hologram, right? There's so many layers, and there's so many different expressions and unique configurations of that heart chakra and of the upper heart complex. And so everybody's is going to be unique to them, to a great degree. But there are some commonalities as well. And so when I refer to when they refer to the crystalline diamond heart complex, it's bringing in a frequency bandwidth and different, ascension codex and sort of divine architecture codex that's coming in and bringing into an individual's awareness that, that this is part of their divine birthright. This is part of their original selves, if you will, right? Structure. And so everybody's sort of at a different place on this human journey and in their ascension cycle to what degree of configuration and reactivation that crystalline diamond complex is at in any present moment, right? And to have, the sort of the full integration and illumination and embodiment of it, or the process of that, I feel, and when I'm shown, is very succinct to where we are each step of the way, along the journey of ascension. Because ultimately how it's been shown to me is as we begin to more and more embody our I am presence, as we're more and more bringing in and embodying our oversoul technology and our higher self technologies, those are all contributing to the sort of the reinstallation and rebuilding, reconfiguration, and activation of that crystalline diamond heart complex. And for some people, it shows up, and it doesn't show up in the same sacred geometry for every person. But for me, how it shows up if I'm, guided to look and to hone in on that, it will show itself as sort of like what has been activated and what is currently in play will be illuminated. And that which is not, shows that there's still, parts of this, this ascension cycle that are going to become opportunities for the further integration and illumination of it, if that makes sense. And then within that too, there are these sort of, how do you describe in words? The more and more sort of the pieces of the puzzle are illuminated, right? If we think of that crystalline diamond heart complex as a puzzle, like as a, this dimension, several dimensionalization, I would say a 3D puzzle, so that we have an understanding of what, then it's like, oh, it's not 3D, it's far beyond that. But if we think of it as a puzzle, and that, we keep bringing in fragments of ourselves, and every time we bring in fragments of ourselves, some of course spanning through, many incarnations and lineages, so the piece is bigger, so to speak, the fragment is bigger, there's further illumination. And every time pieces of that come back, there are these levels of our sort of quantum beingness, levels of these light layers of light fields within our structure that become accessible and kind of turn on. It's like if you look at us like a hologram, it's like the hologram begins to show up in more detail, in more complexity, in greater levels, in larger bandwidth, if that makes sense. But it all sorts of, for how they show it to me, so much of that is, so the catalyst of that expansion and that integration is really meant to, this center point of our beingness, this crystalline diamond heart complex, or the atom seed of our existence, is sort of the conductor of all of that expansion. And it's more complex than that, and it's all interlinked, and and all of our chakra systems are working in conjunction with one another when we're balanced, right? And when they're activated. And so what takes place here has, I don't know, I'm just going to make it this 100 other things that then take place, as a result of within the other systems of our chakras and so forth. So they call, it comes through as termed as this crystal diamond complex because it's so multifaceted. It's this pure crystal diamond clarity. It's beyond, any scope of comprehension, the level of pristine, immaculate clarity that it can hold. And by that, mean completely unfiltered and direct sort of communication to pure source consciousness.
So that center, I mean, of course, all our energetic centers are connected to source, and there's that communication, but there seems to be some sort of communication or that is taking place specifically in the heart center. That how does that differ from, like, what's the significance to that center specifically? How does that differ to all the other chakras that are in this connection as well?
Because really always intended to be sort of the center point, and the main hub of pure connection to source. It's sort of the we communicate. Okay, wow. Okay, so we communicate through all of our chakras in different ways, right? Yet this sort of atom seed of existence is, again, like, just like they're showing how there are aspects of that Christos original template that is a common thread throughout all dimensional existences. Because of the complexity of every dimensional existence and their own unique expression of sort of individuation, if you will, or structure. And in some, becomes even complex, because in many existences it's just collectives of light. But even within that light is stored the uniqueness of that particular dimensional existence. So yet what they're showing is the common sort of center point of all communication and all oneness comes through that of the heart complex, through that center point, through that atom seed of the heart. Does that
Yeah, and
answer?
I think that's the depth to it that is we're being called to go into right here. Recognizing it as a center point of communication with source consciousness, with a higher intelligence. Now, I do want to bring it back to checking in with that. How do we go about accessing the heart wisdom, the heart's wisdom? How do we tune into that?
Sure. It, again, it all comes back to sort of this beautiful process of ascension, right? Well, first of all, if we create a clear intention of, I choose to connect to the center point of my heart. I choose to connect to the center point of my eternal existence, the atom seed of my existence, my purest and highest form of, hub of communication with source. The more we bring our intention and our awareness and our desire to that, the more we are able to access that and to do it. Yet once again, and they're bringing it in, the more that becomes clear, and that becomes more uninterrupted, if you will. The clearer our container becomes, the less emotional density, the less filters that source communication has to get through or move through in order to sort of land in that space. The sort of the deeper and the more embodied and the more connectedness we feel, right? It's always there. It's never not been there. That's all part of the illusion. Yet there's a realness to the layers of chaotic frequencies, nodes, implants, entanglement, and everything else that has been kind of built up within each one of our individual fields throughout time, that makes it more challenging to hear, see, feel, and embody. So as we become, we further along on our paths with the desire to release that which no longer serves us and bring in more of our divine essence, more and more it's like, oh, okay, now I see what my intention is leading to. You become more and more connected with everything, as you're a part of everything, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the ultimate expression, or the ultimate manifestation, if you will, of that interconnectedness with that divine heart complex, is to start to go from the intellectual, more and more from the intellectual concept that we are all one, that I am God, that you are God, that I see God in everything and every being, to, oh, actually, we are all one. I'm feeling that. I'm knowing that. It's palpable,
Mm-hmm.
right?
That's what we're expanding into, the experiential knowingness of it, not this idea that we are one, but feeling that sense of connection with all that is.
Yeah. And that comes, you know, all parts of us are aligning to be able to attune with that, right? So that's where so many people try to leave their physical bodies and experience that, you know, in the higher realms, and, you know, but in this ascension cycle, and then they find that they're having all sorts of like pains and aches and dis-ease, and, you know, every one of our bodies has to be part of the ascension cycle, or the ascension process this time around. You know, there have been times where, you know, there's been ascension cycles within the Earth's evolutionary existence, where you could ascend, you know, but ascending meant leaving the physical body, because the physical body couldn't handle the vibrational, you know, bandwidth of what that ascension looked like. For this ascension cycle, it's meant to happen while still in the physical temple. And so you know, it's all about being here. It's all about being in your physical body, and kind of rolling with the physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual ascension, which is happening simultaneously. And so I think they bring that up because as we were journeying through what was just unfolding, you know, your everything, all the cells within your body become this very unified in consciousness. You know, the cellular water, everything works in this grand orchestration. Whereas now, for most people, the cells within our body have separate agendas, and, you know, and our mental body and our emotional bodies with a separate agenda than our physical body. So it's all about coming back into this unification of all of our bodies. And as we were moving through that, they just showed kind of what the new human vehicle looks like further down on this in the ascension process. And it's pretty cool. It was like being able to witness the cells and everything just moving cohesively and in this greater sense of illumination. But yeah, I just bring that in to the field of conscious awareness because it's pretty cool.
Upgraded human suits?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. I'm looking at the time, but I want to hear. I want to hear a little bit more. Tell me more about these upgraded human suits. This is what we are activating in our bodies. This is what we are. This is the upgrade that we're undergoing.
Yes.
Our physical bodies. I think it's really great and important for us to make mention of this. Our physical bodies are changing as a result of this ascension process. What changes are taking place?
Yeah, a lot. And again, so as we know, it's different for every person, right? Um, Ultimately, too, I think this is perfect because it totally leads, what was just brought through completely leads into this question, and it's all so perfect. So the human physical temple cannot be left out of this equation.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we know, right? That there's a lot within our spiritual community, a lot of people who are so masterful in the gifts that they have and that they're sharing. And a lot of these gifts, part of their service of healing and these gifts create an environment to where they leave their body for periods of time, sometimes for several hours throughout the day, others more kind of intermittently, in which that's part of their experience. But I think not only with those people, but just generally speaking, from pain and traumas and from just the chaos, right, of what's going on right now, people are they want to check out. It's just like, this is too much, like I just need to like check out of my body, right? And we do it in different ways. People do it in different ways. Some people it's they through different substances. Some it's through more like sort of mindless activity, or like watching movies or TV and stuff like that. There are all different ways to do it, right? And there's no judgment around this. It's just that there's just a wanting to bring in the awareness that part of the sort of the harmonious journey of this ascension cycle is to bring a greater awareness and sort of back into that the understanding that your body is the sacred temple, right? That's housing all of this. And so bringing more awareness into it in that way, knowing that we really have to bring the physical body along. And if we fight that, or we're in resistance to that, that's when people will feel like, oh my gosh, like, I don't understand. I'm doing all these things, but my body is just like, I have all this pain. So I think they really want to bring that in, because I think that's come up a lot, these like the ascension symptoms and stuff that take place with the physical body. I mean, some of it's just going to happen even if you are present in your physical body, but an awareness that it's this grand orchestration of all bodies working together and that they're all equally important. Like the spiritual body is not more important in this ascension cycle than the physical body, because we're in a physical reality right now, and that's what's housing our soul and housing the whole ability to be able to participate in this in this process. So how that looks is, the more we kind of bring in that awareness and we're like, okay, I get it, like it's all, we need to focus on all bodies. And sometimes it's going to be more attention to the physical, and other times it'll be more attention to the mental. But ultimately, it all balances out. And we know that all of these bodies are going to be calling forth different things that are needed along the way. And we have to, listen and hear and communicate with equal importance, all of these bodies. So the more we kind of get into that symbiosis relationship just within our conscious awareness and an intention of creating more mind, body, spirit connection, right? Which of course we know happens very easily through practices like meditation and breath work, and and just having that intention. The more we do that, the more we're able to take all of what was earlier talked about, which is, this reintegration of this divine blueprint and Christos blueprint, and the cellular structure of the human suit begins to work cohesively and, in symbiosis with these other structures from within. And it becomes lighter. And and you start to realize, a lot of people that are on this realize, like, oh my gosh, like I really require a lot less food right now, but really high, like the nutrient density and the quality of the food is of the utmost importance right now. But I really am not requiring as much food. I'm requiring a ton of water. Like, it's like, I just can't get enough water. And then you'll go through a little pocket and it's like, wow, now I need a lot of foods like root vegetables and things like that. And I feel like I really need to ground whatever just took place, whatever upgrades just took place. I need to kind of ground myself. Right. And so I think these are very practical messages that are coming forth that are sort of, showing the cycles of the physical needs in the body kind of moving through this. So really just getting attuned with the rhythm and the request of what's being called forth. Like, I need more rest right now. I need more this, I need more that, oh, now I'm starving, and I need a lot more calories, because maybe within our spiritual bodies, all of a sudden we just got this huge download of crystalline architecture, and it's running so much energy that it's requiring more until it kind of calibrates, right? So it sort of equals out. But ultimately what they're showing, and what they were just showing, is that there becomes this beautiful integration to where all of the bodies have kind of come into this greater sort of form of unity consciousness, to where they feel less separate. I mean, they're not separate, they're all working together now, but they become more cohesive in some way.
Mm-hmm.
And they're actually showing the physical body emanating and sort of radiating more light and less density from it, which is really beautiful.
And to throw this conceptualization in there, I would think that this is the activation of our light body.
Yes. And the integration, right? Yes. But both, yes. Yeah. And that kind of, to come full circle to all of it, our higher self and our light body and our oversoul, sort of coming in together. And now we'll never house our entire structure, so to speak, of the oversoul, but we'll house the communication network that is, capable of being housed within this dimensional existence and framework, if you will.
Is it fair to say that in these incarnations, in these lifetimes, this will come online?
For some people, absolutely. And my being like one of the holders of the flame of eternal hope, it's that.
Is that a figurative thing, or does that go deeper?
It goes deeper.
Okay, we won't go deeper.
Yeah,
today.
I'm like, oh, I don't know if
yeah.
Yet, to some degree, every incarnate that is present during this, ascension cycle holds access to, to what takes place. And, even if their own soul doesn't choose to be part of, sort of the full ascension process, they decide to leave their physical bodies, it's going to be carried on through their ancestral lineages and collective lineages for them to have access to anyways. I mean, should they choose to come back in here to this earth plane. So my felt sense is that there will be a very significant number of beings that will experience this level of ascension. Yes.
And to wrap this up in I think will be the perfect way to, what benefit is there to this? How does this make our experience a greater one?
Well, the benefit of it is that, again, there's, in every microcosm, the ripple effect to all beings in existence. So being these eternal creator beings that are constantly seeking to experience new, ways of knowing themselves, knowing ourselves, right? It's just, there's so many variables and challenges and ranges of emotion and complexity and density to this particular existence and incarnation. It's sort of like, it's such a privilege and honor to be a part of it. I dare say it's the most challenging ascension cycle that's ever happened in existence, because there's been so many, and again, that would be a judgment. But certainly from the understanding of how many beings are, witnessing watching, as though this is like the greatest, multiversal reality show currently on air. I think that it's a grand feat. It's a grand honor, privilege, opportunity, and in a very linear terminology, challenge to ascend through this.
It's a beautiful, beautiful time that we're in. And each and every one of the beings that are tuning into this chose to be here at this time to experience this. So to all of those that are hearing this, thank you for being here with us. I think this is a good time to bring it to an end. I mean, as much as there is the part of me that will just want to keep going forever and just share more and more, I know that it probably makes sense to wrap things up. And I'll probably say this towards the end of each one of our conversations. I do intend on getting you back on for another one, if you'd be so kind to join me.
Of course, I would love that. I love our time together.
Okay, so before you go though, I do want a little bit of a segment here for you to share where listeners can find out more about you and what you got going on. Even if you want to share a little bit about the that specific program that you spoke to me about, anything that you feel called to guide someone towards.
Sure. Okay. Well, so yeah, I guess the best way to get a hold of me or communicate with me would be through my website, which is brooklynrayne.com, www.brooklynrayne.com, or on Facebook. A lot of people message through that, and I do private sessions, which are great. And also, I've recently done a series that is no longer live, but it is available, the recorded series called Activating Your Divine Blueprint. And it's all about integrating, clearing away. It meets every person where they are on their journey, clearing away that which no longer serves them and bringing in more of whatever is meant to help facilitate embodying more of who you are and why you're here. So it was a lot of fun, and creating that series, co-creating, I should say, obviously, being the facilitator of that series. And there will be a lot more of these types of series and classes and things to come in 2021. So yeah.
I'm personally looking forward to anything and everything that you create and share in the future. So I'll be keeping a close eye. I'll definitely link all the resources you just mentioned. A link to your website, a link to those sessions, as well as a link to this series, Activating Your Divine Blueprint, in the show notes to this episode. Brooklyn, once again, I have to express my deep, deep appreciation for you, everything that you share. I personally just get a expansive sense of growth and elevation when we connect. And I always say that my own personal curiosity to hear what you have to share is what drives me to ask the questions I do and to invite you on the show over and over again, because like I had mentioned, I am going to get you on for another one and
I
probably
look
another one
forward
after
to
that. And
it. Yay!
so last time I'll say it for this episode here. Thank you. And for the listeners, thank you for tuning in. Senders, that is going to be all for this episode of the Awaken podcast. I do want to thank you for jumping in and listening. If you stuck with us for what was a little bit of a longer episode, so much love and gratitude for you. Definitely shows that you're committed to the process of integrating your soul. Before you go though, if you've been enjoying the show and you'd like to show your support, a couple ways you can do that. We are open to receiving donations to bring in the energetic resources to better serve our mission. If you feel called to contribute in this way, you can head on over to togetherweascend.com/donate. And if you've been enjoying the show specifically and you'd like to support us in getting it out to more people, you can head on over to iTunes to give us an honest review. And that you can do at togetherweascend.com/iTunes. Thank you for being here with us, Ascenders. Thank you for listening to this episode of Awaken. And until next time, keep ascending.